All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Executive Roundtable, From Search to Solutions, How AI Agents Can Power Digital Commerce in 2025. I'm Brenda Farias. I'm the Senior Event Operations Manager here at CMS Wire, and I'll be kicking things off today. So we are thrilled to have you here for what promises to be a dynamic and insightful conversation on the real-world impact of AI in digital commerce. Today's session is made possible thanks to LucidWorks, a leader in search and discovery solutions that help some of the world's top brands deliver more personalized and power digital experiences. Now let's get to the heart of today's topic. AI is transforming how people buy, how people sell, and engage online. But as many of you know, turning that innovation into actual impact isn't always simple. That's why we've gathered an expert panel of digital commerce leaders from both B2B and B2C backgrounds to help cut through the hype and share how they're applying practical AI to boost discovery, to speed up decision making, and drive measurable results without the bloated tech stacks or runaway budgets. For today, we'll explore three topics, one of them being how high-performing teams are shifting focus from buzzwords to business metrics like conversions, average order value, and customer lifetime value. We'll also dive into real-world use cases where AI is enhancing search, recommendations, and product discovery. And last, we'll touch on why keeping humans in the loop leads to smarter, more brand-aligned AI experiences. So we got a lot in store. Plus, we'll give you an exclusive look at the commerce benchmark data for 2025, including where top-performing brands are placing their bets next. So we're excited to dive in, but first, let me welcome our incredible speakers who bring hands-on experience and valuable insights from across the commerce landscape. Michael, let's start with you. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, thanks, Brenda. I'm Mike Sinaway, CEO of LucidWorks. As Brenda mentioned, we are a data discovery and retrieval company. The way I describe us to folks who don't know us, we're Google inside the company. But as Google wants to index the world's data and make it available, we index your data and make it available only to the customers or employees that should see it. Personally, I've been in the tech space for almost 40 years now, starting way back in the 80s, client server, MRP, gravitating to ERP, and then CRM, and then SaaS systems. And then for the last 10 years, I've worked around machine learning, AI, and now generative AI. Look forward to sharing some insights today on the call.
Thanks, Michael. We're happy to have you. Trish, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Brenda. Hi, I'm Trish Weckman, and I've spent the last 20 years leading customer and employee experience and change management efforts across a variety of industries. Most recently, my focus has been in the financial services space as the Chief Customer Officer for a fintech focused on personal lending. And in my current role as Chief Experience Officer at Pontum Tech Partners, I will be leading an experience practice using my own experiences to help other organizations to tackle their CX, EX, and change challenges, many of which have AI at the heart of them. So excited to dive into the conversation today.
Perfect. Thank you, Trish. And Tiffany, can you please tell us about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, thanks for having me today. My name is Tiffany Miller, and I've spent the last 25 plus years leading digital technology and product teams across both financial services and healthcare. In my previous role, I served as the head of digital technology at Fidelity Investments and sat on the board of a top 20 credit union where I helped drive and shape strategy around digital transformation and growth. Today, I coach executives and advise organizations on modernization and innovation, everything from overhauling legacy platforms to launching new products that drive market share and meaningful business outcomes. As a longtime technologist, much like Michael and Trish, AI is certainly a hot topic and always at the forefront of every conversation I feel like I'm having these days. So I'm excited to have this conversation with both of them and share some of our insights with everyone.
Perfect. Thank you. So we have a lot to cover, so I'll stop talking, but just wanted to let our audience know that we are going to be taking questions throughout, and we'll have a Q&A session at the very end. So please visit that Q&A box on the top right-hand corner of your screen to add your questions. And also just jump in the chat, let us know where you're joining us from or what questions you have. And last but not least, there is also a documents tab. So there's a lot of good resources from LucidWorks in that docs tab. So please remember to check those out throughout today's event. And with that said, I'll pass things over to you, Tiffany, for the first topic.
All right, thanks, Brenda. Why don't we kick things off by talking about outcomes? Because at the end of the day, AI isn't about hype, it's really about impact. Our first topic today is all about driving meaningful metrics, and that means focusing less on buzzwords and more on what really matters, things like conversions, average order value, and customer lifetime value. And so, as someone who's always been hyper focused on customer outcomes, I always like to say that, at Fidelity and the other work that I do, we never led with AI as the answer. We always started with identifying real friction points in the customer journey or operational bottlenecks a lot of the time, and then explored whether AI was the right tool to solve the problem. At Fidelity, and even now in my advisory work, we really focus on two guiding principles to ensure that any investment, especially in AI, was directly tied to business performance and long-term value. And that started with first grounding ourselves on everything needed to be in measurable outcomes. Whether the goal is to increase retention, improve digital self-service adoption, or drive operational efficiency, our product and technology teams always identified what success looked like in advance. And this wasn't about vanity metrics. It was really looking at KPIs, hard at those KPIs, net new accounts, share of wallet, digital engagement. Ultimately, in financial services, it's about customer lifetime value. If we couldn't draw a line from the investment to the outcome, we really didn't move forward on things until we could make that connection. And I think the second thing that we always thought about when we were diving into how we would try these outcomes was really focusing on what we would call a scan, try, scale model. We're constantly scanning for new opportunities, surfacing ideas directly from our teams, our customers, what the data itself was telling us. And we'd run control pilots to test those AI-driven solutions. Things like predictive servicing, intelligent routing, and even hyper-personalized content in our digital channels. The goal was really to determine early and quickly if the solution was actually moving the needle on the metrics that mattered for us. And those metrics oftentimes were about reducing call volumes, improving time to resolution, et cetera. And only when we had real data would we move to scale that. And so I think, for me, it was always around AI only adds value when it's purposeful and meaningful. And for us, that isn't really about the technology, but it is about building better experiences and driving better outcomes and doing that in a way that's scaled intelligently over time, not just that singular moment in time. So, Trish, with your background as a chief customer officer, right, there's a lot of connectivity between the two of us. You've been deeply focused on experience and outcomes. When it comes to using AI to boost customer value, what specific metrics have you been tracking or do you think about, and how do those guide your strategy?
Yeah, it's a great question, Tiffany, and a lot of what you said really resonated with me. I think as we determine what are the right metrics to track, we, in my prior role, really spent a lot of time understanding the target consumer and doing a lot of research around what the CX experience, what the CX vision needed to be for the organization, so that if you are deploying AI in certain places or if you're deploying technology, you're ensuring that you're solving a specific problem for the customer. So in terms of the contact center, we're looking at a lot of the typical metrics that you see tracked in a contact center, average handle time and CSAT, but also utilizing AI to enable the agents differently than we have in the past. We started to find that we were also seeing a bump from an employee experience perspective. And being a deep believer in the connection between customer experience and employee experience, I got really interested in understanding, as we improve the experience for the agents, utilizing agent assist tools and ways to make the experience better for them, were we actually seeing outcomes on the agent side as well as on the customer side? And what we are seeing, and what I'm hearing from other folks that are approaching it this way as well, is that the more you enable those agents to have the information at their fingertips, to be able to answer questions quickly, to be able to really solve customer problems with one call as opposed to having to pass folks around, as you are able to do that and enable them and empower them to really serve the customer in a meaningful way, that is driving customer outcomes that we are then able to track with the other traditional CX metrics like NPS and CSAT. So we started out by thinking about how can we really think about some of these traditional metrics, but as we watch and learn and grow, we are seeing that it's having an impact on the employee experience as well, which has helped us to guide our strategy.
I think it's really interesting that connectivity between customer experience and employee experience, and just how inexplicably they're tied and becoming more intermingled as the digital channels continue to evolve. Michael, from your point of view and the vantage point of LucidWorks, you work with both B2B and B2C brands. What kind of trends are you starting to see in how high-performing organizations are really using AI to drive business critical KPIs like long-term value and conversion rates?
Well, the simple answer is they're deploying them fearfully and carefully. There is definitely a split between internal versus external use cases. So internally, for things like coding, for productivity improvement, for G&A cost reduction, companies are more willing to take a risk, deploy those tools. If an employee has a bad experience or if it hallucinates, it's not the end of the world. But companies are very fearful of making that same mistake externally with their customers. We work with several dozen clients where we've built pilots or prototypes, and in your scanned, try, scale scenario, they all scan, they all try, and then they are very cautious about deciding the scale, and they want to test it. They want to make sure it's bulletproof and then move forward. Now, the prototypes are showing real results. They're showing significant impact in engagement, significant impact in conversion, and then ultimately significant impact in revenue. But all of that doesn't matter if you make one highly public, highly embarrassing mistake, and that's what they're all wrestling with right now. And the state of the art is still kind of risky. So companies are being very careful, but they're all taking those first steps for sure. And then I think as they get more comfortable with the internal deployments, that'll impact the external deployments as well.
I think those are really great insights, and it's a really important point that you're sharing, is that it's all still relatively new, and we're still very much in the experimentation phase, and everyone's finding their way how to balance this, particularly in more highly regulated industries. That risk is real for folks, but it does reinforce just how important it is to focus on the right metrics. And how critical that is to really setting up the right foundation for success when it comes to AI. I'd like to shift us over to how AI is actually being applied, right? So you talked a little bit, we both talked about a little bit about scan, try, scale, and some, sort of some of the hesitation, even when you're seeing good results. But especially in the areas of search, recommendations, and product discovery, whether you're managing massive product offerings or you're servicing customers with evolving needs, AI really does play and has the opportunity to play a huge role in helping users find what they want, or even what they didn't know they wanted or what they needed much faster and more effectively. Michael, I'm going to start with you. From your experience, what are some of the most effective AI strategies you've seen that are enhancing discovery and delivering more relevant, personalized experiences to customers?
Yeah, I'm going to reference a study we just completed, and there should be data from that study available in the documents. For 3 years now, we've done a survey of AI practitioners, people who build AI tools, deploy them, or use them. But this year we went a little bit further. This year we built our own AI agent to go out and look at what people are actually doing. So rather than just have companies tell us or employees tell us what they're doing at their companies, we built something we called GuideBot. It leverages multiple AI models, goes out to B2C and B2B company websites and put them through its paces. It is amazingly persistent and inventive. For example, to test B2C experiences, it applied for a credit card. We didn't tell it to do that. It just decided it needed a credit card to do actual purchases. In the B2B space, it went and applied for a business license in the state of California so that it could interact as a registered business with some of these B2B sites. So the tool itself is intimidating and scary, but then it gave us really good insights to what companies are actually doing. There's a lot of classic, what we call classic AI or machine learning things in personalization, in fitment, in recommendations. In terms of the newest tools in agentic AI, we're seeing about a quarter of the B2C and B2B companies adopting some type of guided selling, some type of capability where they're talking the customer through the sales interaction as if they were a concierge kind of salesperson. We're seeing only about 10% doing conversational commerce and only about 5% having a true kind of full service chatbot. It's early stages. We think about double the number of companies that are experimenting with those tools. But there's a really good data set now available, and I encourage folks to go to that document file and take a look at some of that information. We've sliced it up in 48 different business segments so you can compare yourself to your peer group.
Trish, from your experience in your prior role at Best Egg and where you are today, anything that you can share that you're seeing start to take place and evolve in this space?
Well, yeah, first of all, I have to say, I would love to meet that bot and see how their credit card experience went. I spent a lot of time building credit card experience in my past lives. So that's interesting and also startling to hear. And Michael, I'm very, very interested to jump into that research and take a look. I think, even tying back to what you said earlier, there still is a lot of hesitation. And I think particularly in spaces like financial services, where you're also layering on regulatory concerns and compliance concerns, there's a little bit of a hesitance even to do that customer or test and learn in terms of customer facing. Where I feel like we've seen a little bit more progress is on the back end. Again, things like agent assist, even journey mapping, which is an area that my team is focused on. There is so much happening in that space that what previously would take a team maybe 2 weeks locked in a conference room to do, with AI, you're able to pull in the appropriate data and get a result very similar to that previous result in a matter of hours and maybe even less than that. And then that work is going to be able to help kind of create a pathway towards where AI can help with other things. So I think it's using those behind the scenes opportunities to build the case and to show the organization and the leadership and the compliance teams and the regulatory teams how well it can work for some of those use cases before you can actually get in and start using it in some of the areas that Michael was talking about. And that's at least from my experience.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to add on, watching the AI agent work has been eye-opening, fascinating, at times horrifying. We caught it early on. We caught it lying to us. It's like a petulant child. It decides it's going to do something or not do something. We saw it skip some steps and then said to the agent, "Why did you skip these steps?" And it was very apologetic, said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that. And I shouldn't have lied to you when you caught me." I mean, they absolutely need supervision and guardrails because they do end up having a mind of their own. So, Tiffany, back to you.
Yeah, it's coming from and spending my entire career in financial services and healthcare. These are the things that I find most fascinating, but also most frightening as we continue to dive deeper into the world of AI, right? And, on a positive side, it's been an interesting transition the last couple of years, kind of watching the evolution from really providing more recommendations on things and surfacing product to anticipation of needs is how I would describe it, right? And it's incredibly powerful tools at our disposal now that allow us to actually understand a customer intent, their preferences, and even moments of hesitation that they might be having, right? Based on both their macro behaviors, but also their micro behaviors, right? We can use that context now to really understand what their next best interaction might be. And I think it has incredible potential to continue to really change the end-to-end customer journey, and including that connection back to the employees and those that service customers, to really create robust interfaces and experiences and really adjust in real time as someone's actually trying to make decisions, because that is largely what they're trying to do, is make decisions. But it comes with some challenges in that. And I think some of the things that we do talk about often, but really need to emphasize as we move forward is that it can only be as smart as the data that we are feeding it, and making sure that we've got good data quality and infrastructure and hygiene practices on that. And then I touched upon it a little bit before. We're kind of entering this new realm, right? Michael, you talked about the hesitation. Trish, you touched upon it too. Yeah, it's not just a technology challenge that I think we're all facing. We're entering a realm of, it really is a shared responsibility across product and marketing and legal and the service teams. And how are we getting that alignment across all of them? Not just to make sure that we're not delivering fragmented or conflicting experiences, but that, at the end of the day, we're in the business of building trust with our customers, everyone to some degree, but particularly in healthcare and financial services. And how do you make sure that they're involved early enough in the process and in the modeling to understand that, for example, your bot is not going to open up a credit card on somebody's behalf without them knowing about it, right? And making sure that we understand kind of where that line is so that we're not eroding trust. We're continuing to build trust for people. And I think when organizations are getting that right, AI really becomes such a significant strategic enabler for them, and really driving that long time engagement. We've talked a lot about AI, how AI is enhancing discovery. We've talked about how powerful it is. I think the world right now is talking a lot about how it's replacing people. I don't tend to believe that. I think it's just another thing where we're going to really find our way in combining technology with human insight to create smarter, more balanced and aligned experiences. But like we've all said, we have to find our way in balancing AI with human oversight. And it's really key in ensuring that AI-driven interactions stay authentic, they stay trustworthy, and they stay aligned with your broader brand values. Trisha, I'm going to start with you. Given your work in financial services, and that at the core of any financial services is one's ability to trust their relationship and the dynamic they have with that partner, how do you build customer trust while also introducing AI, especially in experiences where compliance and empathy both matter?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's something that a lot of organizations are kind of struggling with right now, trying to figure out. I would say in my experience, one of the best ways that we are able to predict where technology is going to be meaningful is by doing deep research and understanding your customer, the customer that you're serving. What are the drivers? What are the problems that they're coming to you to solve? But also, what differentiates you from your competitors for them? And then how can you plug into understanding their needs and their priorities? How can you understand where to plug the AI in that it's going to be meaningful for them to solve problems? For example, at Best Egg, we spend a lot of time researching our customers to understand, again, what does the experience need to be for them? And some of the things that we learned was that ease and flexibility and guidance were important to customers. So having that information at our fingertips as we're building experiences, both in the servicing side for sure, but also across the customer's journey, we are making decisions as human beings about how to use the AI to enhance their experience. And when customers feel that you're listening to them and understand them, that starts to inherently build trust with your brand and with your organization. And so if customers are calling us and feeling seen and recognized through our process because we're deploying AI in the right places, that is building that trust with them, that they know that we are doing the right thing organizationally to be responsible in how we're deploying AI and thinking about it. So for me, I think the human touch has been around deeply understanding and empathizing with the customer, ensuring that our employees are demonstrating that same level of empathy and understanding the customer. And then as we design these experiences, ensuring that we're taking what we know and what we've learned and utilizing that to make the smart decisions about where to deploy AI. I will say, Tiffany, there is still a lot of customer distrust around AI and replacing people. And, even at a fintech where people are thinking, oh, this is modern and, very technologically advanced, you still have customers that have hesitation when they hit an IVR. And when they can't get to a human being to solve a particular problem. And so again, it is all about knowing the segments of your customers, how they want to engage, and where it's going to be meaningful to make that experience easier for them, more flexible and more guided.
I think that's a really interesting point. It's something that I always thought about often, still think about often, is that balance between how much are you able to surface that creates that seamless experience and allows people to be able to solve problems on their own, while also being able to show up in a moment that matters for them. And I think this is where AI gets really interesting in understanding the patterns and behaviors. And can we get smart enough to detect that this might be a moment that matters, that they're struggling, and interject the human side of things and the human element into it more proactively, where historically, I think we've all been in the business of let's try to avoid them actually calling, pick up the phone to talk to a human. And so I think we're at the cusp of really starting to flip some of that script and look at it from a little bit of a different lens, because we can now solve a lot of sort of the common everyday challenges that people are having, right? We can take those, off the phone centers. How do we start to leverage the people and the talent that we have who service our customers in a different way so that they can provide what a human can provide, which is that very empathetic, emotionally connected, understanding the relationship and the dynamic, understanding you as a much broader person and as a family. I don't think that we've really started to scratch the surface on that. I think it's going to be really, really interesting over the next couple of years as we start to understand the business case and the business value in maybe undoing some of the ways we've been doing things for a while in that. So I think there's lots to come in that'll be both really challenging and interesting for everyone.
I can build on that for a second with a couple of examples, because I think what you said is so important. There is things that a customer doesn't feel like they need a human being to help them do, downloading a statement, changing a due date. Those things they're going to be much more comfortable with, an AI helping them or an AI doing it or even doing it themselves. But to your point, when a customer is in financial distress and they now need to be late with a payment and they need to find a solution on how they're going to make their payments, those are scenarios where they likely are going to prefer to talk to a customer. And if you put the AI in front of them to try to solve that for them, that breaks the trust immediately. Yeah. And so it is, again, to your point, that empathy still needs to exist. And you need to know the moments that matter. I love that phrase, to the customer, where the human being is going to be involved. So I jumped in, but I got so excited because I thought of those examples and it's just so aligned to what you're saying.
Yeah, I could not agree more with you on that. And that's where I think these are now different kinds of use cases for AI, right? Where it's not AI solving the problem for you directly, but AI solving the problem that they can get you to someone who can. And that, very, very interesting. Michael, as you think about the conversation that we just had and some of the points that Trish brought in this, right? This is all driven by models behind the scenes. And we think about the modeling work that's going on. What have you seen work best for integrating human oversight into the AI systems? And where do you see brands maybe stumble or struggle a little bit with that?
Yeah, what we've found to be very successful is to make sure the humans always have a say in the process. I'll start with a stumble example. Fortunately, it was not us, it was one of our competitors. One of the things our software does is it enables merchandisers to select the product assortment to put on the website, to promote certain products, to bury other products. And one of our competitors came out with a tool, AI-based, that automated all of that. And they were able to show empirically that the algorithms actually made better decisions than the humans in terms of optimizing conversion and revenue. And you know how many merchandisers bought that system? Zero, because who wanted to buy the system that replaced them in their job? We have similar capabilities, but what we always enable is the merchandiser to turn on or turn off those algorithms. So they can say, yes, I believe for this product line, for this brand, for this region, this algorithm is better than a human. Let it make the decisions. But it's the merchandiser's decision to give that power to the AI. And in certain circumstances, retain that power with the human. If you've got a fast fashion product or something very trendy, an algorithm is never going to replace the good taste and the judgment of a good merchandiser. And so the key is to always let the human control the ultimate decision. Yeah, that's a customer-facing example. We've also learned how to very carefully talk about these tools in terms of triggering employee fear and resentment. We talk about things like efficiency, and what we think about is, well, these tools will make people 10%, 20% more efficient. A lot of people, when they hear efficiency, think job cuts and layoffs. And so it's important to talk about AI tools that make existing employees more efficient rather than talking about making the entire company more efficient, for example, because everybody is on edge and everybody is hypersensitive. So just keeping a human in the loop, giving them the ultimate authority, recognizing that the word choice and the messaging is critical to how people either embrace or reject these tools. And I'm sure there'll be many more stumbles along the way, but we're learning with each deployment and with each new capability that's hitting the marketplace.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting what you just said, and it's that cross section of making sure that you're embedding human judgment at key decision points, right? And as we're having this conversation, sort of the thing that kept surfacing for me in the back of my head is, human oversight isn't optional; it's really foundational in all of this, right? To Trish's earlier point about doing things that erode trust and confidence with customers. No one ever wants oversight to slow things down. That's never the intent of providing oversight in this. But we all do have a responsibility to make sure that we're continuing to build solutions that are compliant, that are actually explainable, and that are aligned with business goals and values. And so that really starts with being intentional about the choices that we are making. And right, the example that you shared about the bot that had better judgment than the humans, but nobody wanted it, right? There's that connection of sort of trust but verify a little bit in some of these conversations. And so how do you start, what do you put in place? What systems do you put in place? What governance do you have in place to be able to bring the experts, right? The legal teams, the compliance teams, the technology, the operations, the business, the product experts, kind of bring them in to make that judgment call on we are in the right place, or we maybe have gone too far with this, and we need to dial it back. It's just, all that it's just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I think, sometimes, right, we find that out. Just because you can open a credit card for someone does not mean that you should open a credit card for someone. And so, really, 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 really interesting kind of cross section and how this will take shape as time moves on, and we find that balance between the human oversight and the judgment that comes with experience versus what we're able to program the computers to do for us. At this point, I think y'all have shared some really valuable insights. We've covered quite a bit of ground across our topics. We've touched on a whole bunch of different things, from driving meaningful metrics to enhancing discovery with AI, as well as just how critical it is to continue to have humans involved in the role of oversight in this. And so I'm going to open it up now. We're going to start taking some questions. So as a reminder, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A so we can get them. We do have some that have come in. So Michael, if you're okay, I'm going to start with you.
Sure.
For the first question. What are some of the strategies that have helped LucidWorks move from AI pilots to scalable performance without overwhelming your tech stack or budget?
Well, I'll start with the budget aspect of that. Concerns about cost have been interesting to track over the last 3 years. 3 years ago, we all kind of thought these things would be free, right? ChatGPT was giving you a free account, as was Google and others, or then it was $19 a month to sign up. Now it is the second most common concern. Data security is a concern of major or extreme concern. of almost 60% of the companies out there. Cost is a close second. And we found out these things aren't free. So first off, most companies are using expensive commercial models. 80% of the deployments involve a ChatGPT or a Gemini or something that you pay by the token. And only 20% are using the open source tools like a Llama from Meta. And so the mix of commercial versus open source is driving cost, but also the number of models. So when you're using an AI or building an AI solution, it's never just one LLM. You might have one tool for indexing, one tool for RAG, one tool for natural conversation, another tool for triaging the queries. And so you're using 3 or 4 models, and those can get real expensive. So one of the things we do with clients is figure out where we can use a cheap open source model, like at indexing time, because you're not worried about millisecond responses that can happen overnight or over the weekend. Then use a small language model that works in 20 or 30 milliseconds, but is run on your own cloud or your own servers, which are also cheap or free. And then only use the expensive commercial models for something like natural language processing. So that's one model or one way to save costs. The other is to not treat every query the same, right? If someone's shopping for a car or a refrigerator or diamond jewelry, yeah, spending a lot on a large language model from a commercial source is worth it. If somebody's shopping for pencils or paper clips, you don't want to spend that much money on a query. So query parsing and routing it to the most cost-effective search solution or technology solution is another way to keep costs under control. So those are some of the things we're finding and are continuing to evolve.
I think it's safe to say from what you just shared, there are common best practices we've all used throughout our career that will apply, and then there are still some evolving aspects of this that we're all going to figure out as we go. Trish, from your perspective, we talked a lot about human oversight and how do you really focus on ensuring that it remains part of the AI processes, and why is that, do you think, so important to brand integrity?
Well, so I think I liked Michael's phrase, the human in the loop. I think that's something that is going to have to be the philosophy around how you deploy AI. And for me, I think the special sauce there, the secret is really test and learn, and test with specific use cases where you have the human beings that are the subject matter experts that are very involved in understanding, what you're trying to achieve, what the goals are, how you're measuring towards those goals with the AI, and having the human beings involved in the refinement of that, because it's unlikely that every test is going to get you the results you want right out of the gate. As AI evolves, maybe that'll change, but for now, it is still going to be helpful to have those experts involved. And so I think that is true across any AI deployment. I know in the space where I've spent a lot of time on the research side, this is really changing the game from a customer experience and insights perspective of the tools that we're using and how we're thinking about how we used to look at data now as opposed to how we used to look at it and the role of an analyst. But as we are learning these different tools, and as Michael talked about, there's so many out there right now, there's so much available to test and learn with. Having the human beings that have traditionally done the work and know, the ins and outs and the nuances, having them oversee the test and learn and reporting out on what we're seeing and doing the refinement, I think is going to be especially critical. Because from a brand perspective, you don't want to put something in front of your customers that takes the human touch away or makes them feel like, something's been lost. I think one of the things that's so interesting about AI is it's changing consumer expectations so rapidly. I think we saw that during COVID. We're seeing it again now. And so I want to make sure that, as those expectations are changing, we are defining, what we want our brand to be and what we want our brand to stand for. And we're using AI to enhance that or to elevate that, not to detract from it.
One of the things that you just touched upon is just the evolution of customer expectations. And I think it continues to evolve faster than I think we all anticipated. And a couple of years ago during COVID, I think we probably all thought we've reached the pinnacle of how quickly expectations can adjust, and we were all wrong. with that, right, as AI continues to integrate in, it's able to, right, it's processing faster. And so expectations are continuing to change faster. Michael, as you look ahead to the rest of 2025 and into 2026 and beyond, what are you seeing that is maybe the most promising in terms of opportunities for AI investment in the commercial space?
We're advising clients to exploit the hype. You've got C-suite executives demanding that AI gets deployed. You've got board of directors asking companies, encouraging companies, instructing companies to deploy AI, and they're willing to throw money at it. I'll go back to our data. What our data shows is that while there's a small portion of AI deployments, there's a lot of gaps still in some of the historical stuff. So for example, product availability. Companies are looking at AI to be able to do technical specification interrogation and go into design documents. Only a third of those companies have product availability on their website. So what we're saying is do one for them and one for you. The one for them is the AI for the board, the AI for the C-suite. Yeah, deploy that. But while you're doing that, add product availability to your website. Same thing with language. Only about half of the big retail companies have multiple language options on their website. So yeah, add natural language processing through AI. Go also add Spanish language and French and others. So one for you, one for them. We're telling clients absolutely embrace the hype, embrace the funding, but use it as a way to also fill some of the gaps. The models will continue to evolve at a breakneck pace. Whatever is the best model today, the best technology today, guaranteed will not be the leader next month or the month thereafter. So remain flexible. Do not get locked into one vendor, one source, one technology, but build an architecture that allows you to evolve. We like the analogy of a car with an engine. Build the car, the technology, the AI technology is the engine, be able to change that out as you go. And of course, in overused metaphor, data is the fuel, so you always need the data to power the engine in the car. But yeah, continue to have the flexibility to future-proof your capability.
So you started with the notion that every CEO you talk to, every board you talk to, everyone's asking. I can attest to that. Sitting on a board, those are often questions we're asking, right? Where are we headed with these things? For both of you, as you think about, right, it's a constant topic. It's top of mind for everyone, really at all levels of an organization. As you think about that, and we think about the practicality of AI, what do you think practical AI looks like in an organization? What does it look like in your organization, and how do you define success when implementing it?
So I can jump in and start on that one, Tiffany. I think, again, we tried to, in my prior role, and even now as I'm building a practice, I am really trying to look at what is the problem that I'm trying to solve right now. And this is on a much smaller scale. And what can AI do for me to solve that problem quicker and more efficiently than I have in the past? And so that's how I'm using AI myself. And that's how I would encourage my team in the past. Again, it's a little redundant, but like test and learn, go out there and try different models and see what works for you. But for me, it's really just about the practicality of it is what are problems we can solve quickly with this that don't require the human touch? How quickly can we get those stood up and tested and vetted so that we can deploy them more broadly? And that's, again, on more individual case. I think it's just how are people, thinking about how it makes them quicker and more effective in their day-to-day.
Yeah. And I see the ultimate success is when AI is no longer talked about as a separate thing. It is simply an embedded capability in everything we do. There are AI capabilities in our go-to-market technology, in our supply chain technology, in our finance technology. And it's just something that enhances the processes and the performance in those departments or in those areas. And it's not like, oh my gosh, we need AI. It's we need to sell more, and AI is helping us do that because it's just part of the process.
Yeah, I think you make a great point on that. And eventually we will get there where it just is. And it's something that is not secondary to everyone anymore, but it's right there in the forefront of driving, right? Driving the decisions that we're making. In that vein, Michael, we've got a question from Vivian in the audience, particularly around how you see AI evolving the way people search for answers and solve problems. And how do you think that this might shift the traditional Google-based discovery? And in turn, what does that mean for sponsored products and SEO strategies?
Yeah, that is a scary world for the big SEO companies today. I mean, Google's wrestling with it. You got disruptors like Perplexity, and then you've got what OpenAI has done with Microsoft, because that's the cash cow, right? And if you're no longer a company that's going to pay Google for search engine marketing and product placement, how do they build it into a Gemini response? The jury's still out and figuring out how all that gets done, but the big hyperscalers, the big search companies are trying to figure out ways to monetize that. We already see companies changing the way they interact with search engines to allow more content and less product feed the search responses. And then the idea is that content then translates into product searches. Like somebody searching for brake pads, the content is, here's how you change your brake pads. And then when they read the article about changing their brake pads, there's links to go buy brake pads or the tools to do that. So that's one part of it. The pay-per-click stuff is going to be interesting because we think that will get much more focused. The technology will allow you to target, now instead of segments or look-alike demographics, down to specific individuals. So you'll pay more, but you'll also get a higher response rate and conversion rate over time. But that's still an area that's, like everything else we've said, is very much in flux going forward.
Tricia, anything you'd add to that?
No, I mean, I think Michael nailed it. I do think that, again, it kind of trues back to what we said before. Consumer expectations are changing so rapidly that, I think it's going to be a difficult challenge for businesses to keep up with both the consumer expectations and how the technology is evolving. I do think this is where change management is going to have to play a role too for businesses. You're going to have to bring along both your customers and your employees on that journey. Traditionally, I think change management has really been thought of as like this very time box thing for specific projects. And I think it is going to have to become a very big part of this conversation because, again, we are going to be introducing things quickly to both customers and employees and making sure that we are bringing them along on the ride. And utilizing AI in ways that make sense for both the customers and the employees is going to just be a critical thing that we need to think about on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about different ways to integrate AI. We've got a good question from Audrey from the audience, right? We've kind of stuck to chatbots and using that as like a primary example through the thread of the conversation, but she's got a great question for all of us. Other than chatbots, what other ways can you use AI in customer service tasks? So I'll throw it out to both of you to start, and then I can certainly chime in.
Sure. From an experience perspective, I can tell you, it's absolutely changing the way insights professionals do their work. In the past, you are thinking of all of these different sources of feedback from customers, whether it's on, social, it's from complaints, it's from online sources, and then of course from surveys and feedback. And we're now able to pull together that data and in relatively short order, compile trends that cross channels, which is something that in the past would take a lot of time and energy. Same thing with journey mapping. That's an activity that previously took a lot of time to accomplish, and it was a very human resource heavy lift. And now we're able to take the data and have a phenomenal starting point from a journey map. Again, where humans are going to get involved is in ensuring the quality and the integrity of the outputs there. But those are two interesting use cases that I'm seeing that are affecting customer service outside of just that chatbot idea.
Yeah. And I'll close with one that might be a little bit frightening, and that is these tools will get more anticipatory and predictive in when to reach out to you as a customer. Instead of waiting till you complain or waiting till you give somebody a low NPS score, they'll know you're dissatisfied. They'll know because of the performance. They'll know because of your interaction with their website. They might know because of a post on social media. And so they will know that you are experiencing poor customer service and reach out to you proactively with messaging, with discounts, with promotions. And then they won't even have to wait till you tell them you're upset.
Scary, but also intriguing. Right? There's a lot of possibility in that, especially in a world where a lot of what we're trying to solve is convenience for folks. And so I think it'll be an interesting road ahead as it continues to get smarter and more proactive, and as you said, anticipatory in terms of what people really need and making that connection. So with that, I think we're going to bring Brenda back in, who's going to wrap us up for the day.
Perfect. Thank you. I hate to be the one to always cut off a really good conversation, but we're almost at time. But Michael, Tiffany, Trish, thank you so much for being here today and just for all those golden nuggets that you've left our audience with. And for our audience members, thank you for joining us. Thank you for participating in the Q&A, joining the chat, checking out those resources in the Docs tab. If you haven't done that yet, you still have some time. But we hope that you're walking away with practical ideas for applying AI in ways that drive real business results, and of course without adding complexity. A big special thank you to LucidWorks for making today's event possible. And please, again, in that Docs tab, be sure to check out the upcoming 2025 Commerce Benchmark data. And also look for some follow-up resources coming your way via email. Michael or Trish or Tiffany, any last-minute remarks that you'd like to leave our audience with?
Just reinforce the encouragement to go to that Docs site. There is a lot of that great data I alluded to and much more from GuideBot, our AI market intelligence agent.
And for me, I would just say, in my mind, it all comes down to knowing your customer and knowing your business. And when it comes to the customer, being sure that you are really clear on those meaningful moments that we talked about earlier, because that is probably where you're going to want to deploy some of these tools. And you want to make sure that when you do, there's, only one first impression. You want to make sure that you're getting it right by doing your due diligence ahead of time.
I think from my perspective, Trish said it best. So I will just echo her sentiments. Understand your customer and solve the right problems for them, and the rest of it will work itself out. I really appreciated the conversation today. Very insightful and enjoyable, if not a little bit frightening.
Love it. Well, thank you guys again. Thank you for being here. Thank you, LucidWorks. And then if you wanted to rewatch today's discussion or share it with your team, it was recorded, so you'll be receiving an email with that link to the recording. But until then, we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.